Alright, here's a video that you can use to review the compositions and unit circle quiz. I'm going to go a little quickly. There are two versions to this. I want to make sure that you can see the full answers for both options, so bear with me. If you have the version of the exam that you'd like to review that is not this one, that does not start with -310 on the first question, then jump to, I don't know, approximately about halfway through this video to find your version. Alright, -310 degrees to radians. So what we do is we do -310 degrees, we put it over 1, we multiply it by pi over 180 degrees. That's one of the conversion factors, and we want to be able to cross out the degree symbol top and bottom. So what I get is I get -310 pi over 180. If I take this into my calculator, I divide it, and I hit math, enter, enter, it gives me -31 over 18. Doesn't simplify that much at all. And we can put the pi on the top, or we could put the pi over here if we wanted, off on the side. It doesn't actually matter. They're the same thing. Evaluate g of -5, well, f of g of -5. So -5 goes into the g function. That is 5x plus 3. I'm going to be plugging -5 in for x, so that's 5 times -5 plus 3. That's -25 plus 3, and that's -22. Now that's the first step. That now has to go into the f function. So the f function is 2x squared. I'm going to be substituting in for the x, so it's going to be 2 times -22 squared. I'll pull that over to my calculator. 2 times -22 squared. And that is 968. PEMDAS dictates that the squaring comes first and then the multiplication by 2. So if you do it by hand, make sure you square first. So it's 968. G of j of 4, so I'm going to be putting 4 into the j function. The j function is 2x plus 7i. I'm going to be substituting 4 for the x, so 2 times 4 plus 7i, and that's 8 plus 7i. Now, that's the first step. That has to go into the g function. The g function is 5x plus 3. That means 8 plus 7i plus 3, that goes in for x, and distribute the 5, and that becomes, not 80, 40, plus 35i plus 3, and my final answer, combining like terms, is 43 plus 35i. Convert 11 pi over 6 radians to degrees. 11 pi over 6 times pi goes on the bottom, 180 degrees on top, the pi is crossed out. I get 11 times 180 divided by 6, and that is going to be 330 degrees. 11 times 180 divided by 6. Draw and fully label a diagram, including sine, cos, and tan of the unit circle for an angle theta in the third quadrant. So here are the quadrants. These are quadrant 1, 2, 2, and 3. So if I'm drawing it in the third quadrant, that means it's going to be down here. Drop a line to the x-axis. This is cos of theta. This is sine of theta. And if I project it up this way, this line right here is tangent of theta from the x-axis up to the intersection point. The reference angle for 240 degrees is just saying if I graph 240 degrees, what quadrant would it fall into, what angle would be inside the triangle. So 270 and 360. So if I draw the unit circle, 240 degrees is here, 240. Drop this line. Here's the angle. It's between 180 and 240. 240 minus 180 equals 60. That's the reference angle. What angle is equivalent to 1160? It's negative 1160, so I'm going to add 360 until it is fixed. Oops, wrong app. Negative 1160 plus 360 plus 360 plus 360, still negative, plus 360 is 280. So 280 degrees. Draw and label a diagram of 45, 45, 90 triangle. It doesn't matter what direction you draw it in. This is the angles, 45. The hypotenuse is 1. The sides are radical 2 over 2 and radical 2 over 2. The terminal side of angle theta passes through the point -8, -6. We always did these the same way. Doesn't matter about the negatives. This is theta. Here is -8 is the base. -6 is the height because it's always base comma height. Now I need to find the hypotenuse. So I'm going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That means -8 squared plus -6 squared equals c squared. This is 64 plus 36, which is 100, equals c squared. And so when I square root both sides to get rid of the square, I get that c equals 10. So this side length is 10. Now I need to label the sides, of course. This is the opposite side. This is the hypotenuse. And this is the adjacent because it's next to theta. See? Right next to it. SOHCAHTOA, I'll explain just the first one. Sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, which means the opposite is -6 and the hypotenuse is 10, and we should simplify, so we divide them both by 2 and we get -3 over 5. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's -8 over 10, which is -4 over 5. And tangent is opposite over adjacent, so -6 over -8. And simplify that, divide them both by -2, and I get 3 over 4. Last but not least, use a diagram in algebra to find the exact values of sine, cos, and tan of 930. Well, 930 is too big, so let's fix it. 930 minus 360 minus 360, that's 210 degree angle. So it's 210 degrees. I'll draw my unit circle nice and big. 210, this is 90, 180, 270, 360, and 0. So 210 is going to be in the third quadrant. This is 210. So between 210 and 180, that's going to be a 30 degree angle. That means this must be 60, and this is the right angle. Across from a 30 degree angle is a side length of 1/2. Across from a 60 degree angle is radical 3 over 2. Oh, that eraser's way too big. Now, this is to the left, so this is negative. This is down, so it's also negative. This is cosine the base. This is sine the height. So I already have cosine and sine. The only thing that I still need is I need tangent. Tangent is equal to sine over cosine. Sine is -1/2, so -1/2 over cosine, which is negative radical 3 over 2. I don't divide fractions by fractions. What I do is I keep change and flip. So I'm going to keep the -1/2, change it to multiplication, and then I'm going to flip the bottom. The 2's cross each other out, so do the negatives, and I'm left with 1 over radical 3. So we should write all our answers with respect to the original angle, just to be perfectly correct, 930 degrees. So I would say that in any order, tangent of 930 is equal to 1 over rad 3. I would say that of 930 is equal to negative radical 3 over 2, and I would say that sine of 930 is equal to -1/2. That'd be my full answer. Now I'm going to go to the second version. This one's going to be even quicker. This is full explanations are on the first half, so if you just want to know what the work looks like for this, if this is your version, okay. -280 over 1, I'm going to multiply it by 180 degrees, pi on top. This is going to simplify because they're both divisible by 10, and they're both divisible by 2 after that, so I think this is 14, negative 14 over 9 with a pi on top, or next to it, doesn't matter. Correct. Okay. Negative 4 goes into the g function, then whatever comes out goes into the f function, so I get 5 times negative 4 plus 3. That's going to be negative 20 plus 3 is negative 17. That's my first. That goes into the f function, so that goes into f right here. So I'm going to get 2 negative 17 squared. Pull that over to my calculator. 2 negative 17 squared is 578. Next one, g of j of 7. So 7 goes into j. That's 2 times 7 plus 7i. That's 14 plus 7i. That's going to go into the g function, which is 5x plus 3. So I'm getting 5, 14 plus 7i plus 3. Distribute the 5. 5 times 14 is 70. So 70 plus 7i plus 3. Combine my like terms, and my final answer is 73 plus 7i. Convert 13 pi over 6 radians to degrees. So 13 pi over 6. We're going to multiply it by pi on the bottom, 180 on top. We choose that so that the pi's can cross out. 13 times 180 over 6 is 390 degrees. 13 times 180, then divided by 6. Draw and fully label a diagram including sine, cos, and tan of the unit circle for an angle theta in the second quadrant. So second quadrant, that's up here. Draw my line. This is cos. This line is sine. This is 1, but it doesn't matter. And project this back this way, and this right here is tangent of theta. What is the reference angle for an angle of 210? Here's my unit circle. 210 is in this quadrant, 210 is here, 180 is here. Drop a line here, so this angle in here is 30 degrees. What angle is equivalent to negative 1130? Go to my calculator, I'm going to add a few times to that. Negative 1130 plus 360 4 times is 310 degrees. Draw and label a 45, 45, 90 triangle. You should already know from the last version, rad 2 over 2, rad 2 over 2, and 1. This is 45 and 45. I'm interested in the side lengths because clearly I already told you what the angles are, 45, 45, and 90. So it's the sides that mattered here. The terminal side of angle theta passes through the point negative 6, 8. We draw a triangle. It's always in this orientation here, the base and height. So this is negative 6, this is positive 8. When I do the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, I'm going to plug in negative 6. Put parentheses on these before you square them, especially if they're negative. Equals c squared. This is 100 equals c squared, and therefore when I square root both sides, I get that c equals 10. So this is 10. Label up your sides. From theta, this is the opposite side. This is opposite the right angle. Oh, that's ugly. That's the right angle. Okay. It's also the longest side, so this side is always going to be the hypotenuse. It's the diagonal side. And then this is right next to, so therefore we call this adjacent. SOHCAHTOA. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so that's 8 over 10, which we simplify to 4 over 5. Cos is adjacent over hypotenuse, so negative 6 over 10 is negative 3 over 5. And tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent, which is 8 over negative 6, which we can simplify to 4 over negative 3, or you could put the negative on top, it doesn't matter. Use diagram and algebra to find the exact values of sine, cos, and tan of 960 degrees. 960 degrees is too big, so I'm going to minus 360 twice from it. That's 720, and it's 240 degrees. That's what it's equivalent to. I'm going to go to my unit circle here. This is 0, 90, 180, 270, and 360. 240 degrees is in between these two, so it's down here. Create the triangle to the x-axis. This is 240, so between 180 and 240 is going to be 60 degrees. That means this must be 30. Opposite a 60-degree angle is radical 3 over 2. Opposite a 30-degree angle is 1/2. Because these are both negative is left and down is also negative, so these are both negative. This is cosine and this is sine. Now we just need tangent. Tangent is equal to sine over cos. Sine is negative rad 3 over 2, so negative rad 3 over 2 over cosine, which is negative 1/2. And I don't divide fractions by fractions, I keep change flip. So I'm going to keep the top, negative rad 3 over 2. I'm going to change it to multiplication, and I'm going to flip the bottom. So 2 goes over the negative 1. The 2's cross out, so do the negatives, and I'm left with radical 3 over 1, which we could just say is radical 3. So let's state all these with respect to the original angle, which was 960 degrees. I would say in any order that tangent of 960 is equal to radical 3. I would say that sine of 960 is equal to negative radical 3 over 2. And I would say that cosine of 960 is equal to negative 1/2. And that would be your final answer for that whole question. Good luck with your studying. See you in class.